So as I've said, I am a RACGP from Mildura, Victoria. I'm a father. I've got 2 kids, 6 and 3, so I very much appreciate the difficulties of trying to prepare for these exams with young kids. I'm a husband as well, and a nerd as well, so thus live streams seem like a good idea. I also struggled initially to get through these exams. I had a lot of life things happening at around 22.2, and so I failed. And I thought, okay, that's fine. I'll just reset. It'll all be good. Sat in 2023.1 and failed again. It was only then that I really sat down and kind of said, hey, what am I doing wrong? How am I approaching this? And I realized, as I think many people do, that this is an exam that isn't necessarily about what you know, it's how you answer the questions. And they're wanting the answers in a very particular style, very particular format, and I think that's something that mucks a lot of people up. So I want to make sure that people don't make those same mistakes that I made, and that you get through these exams on your first attempt. So really we need to understand the exam format and the requirements. This is a handwritten exam. We have actually got confirmation now that it will be in the same handwritten format. There'll be 1 line, 1 mark, 1 answer. And this is to avoid the biggest trap people fall for, I think, which is overcoding. That's giving too much information per response, which actually loses you marks. I want you to also know how to use the MCQ answer sheets as well. If this isn't something that you've had much experience or practice in, you probably want to be getting your hands on some practice ones before the day so that you're not getting into the exam not knowing what it is you're doing with those sheets. And of course, practice your handwriting. If you're not handwriting things now is the perfect time to start, because 4 hours of non-stop writing is crap. There's no other way to put it. And so you really need to train up the muscles of the hands, given most of the time we're typing things these days. A lot of us have fallen out of the habit of actually doing writing. And so I want you to be writing things by hand and building up that strength. And of course, no abbreviations. I cannot stress that enough. Yes, it's clinicians marking the exams. Yes, they try and use some common sense, but the rule from RACGP has come out that if you use abbreviations, they'll pretend as if you have not written whatever it is you've written there. So best thing to do not use abbreviations at all. Now, of course, there is a complete study syllabus for the exam available through RACGP. If you haven't gone onto GP Learning and gone through those modules, do it this weekend. Make some time to do it, because it will spell out exactly what is on this exam. Try not to use this time left, this next 52 days, to try and learn new things. Instead, I want you to be practicing questions to identify your weak areas and use these resources like GP Academy, ModMed, KFP Bank. Use them to hone in and perfect your skills in those particular areas and in the answer formats that are going to work best for you. Bearing in mind that this exam does want you to be answering in a particular format, and that's one of the things we're going to train you through these live streams. You also need to really focus in on your time management skills. I want you to be practicing about 2 minutes per question, and that allows you time to get your answers down, write them out, but also to leave you with a little bit of time at the end of the exam for reviewing and revising those answers. If there's things that you aren't so confident on, figure out now how you're going to flag those and come back to it. It's so important to actually remember to come back to it. You don't want to be missing marks because you've forgotten a question. So make sure you've got something really nice, really obvious, and try and have an answer for every question. Even if you're not entirely sure, try and actually get that in there. I can see some comments coming through from the chat here. Which question banks are the best? If we jump back to here. So I personally have done GP Academy and ModMed, and to be honest, I actually found them pretty comparable. I think the real thing is not so much what questions you're doing, just do questions. And I'll show later on as well, we've built a little tool that you can use to try and turn the consults you do in the clinic into practice questions as well to try and prepare yourself. So really, KFP is about mastering the case analysis, trying to work out what is that question they're actually asking us. Practice writing out the clinical summary. The AKT focuses in on what is your clinical knowledge. Do you know ABC? Now they want to know, can you actually apply this to patient conditions? So yes, they might have cases that at first glance look very simple. You just go through ABC. But what they want to start teasing through is what are those particular relevant case points and prompts that actually change that response, that tailor the answer through to that patient written down in front of you. So make sure you are actually answering the question being asked. Don't just see COPD and start regurgitating COPDX. I want you to be thinking, okay, this patient in this circumstance needs this management plan or investigations or whatever the question is. So with this, ask yourself, what is the question actually asking? If it's a history type question, what would you actually ask in the clinic? And try and think through then, how would you format that in the KFP style answer response? For examination, what are you actually looking for? If this patient was sitting in front of you, what are the things you're actually going to be examining for? If they're asking about what is the most important diagnosis or condition not to be missed, it's those serious things, those red flag conditions that you cannot afford to miss at all. If they're looking for the most likely, it's the probable diagnosis. If we're going back to the Murtaugh model style approach. For initial investigations, you're looking at those simple, almost bedside style, inexpensive first line tests you can do very quickly. Whereas if they're asking about what is the best diagnosis tool, they're looking for that gold standard, and it's usually MRI, let's be honest. And of course, if they're looking for an immediate response, fall back to your DRS ABCD. If you get stuck and can't think of a specific management plan for that scenario, DRS ABCD will get you out of trouble every single time. And more often than not, it's actually the exact answer and the exact kind of format they're looking for, because they want you to know that you have an approach to these kind of situations should they arise. So always remember the traps of the KFP, the things that muck people up again and again. It's the answer the question being asked. Be specific and concise. Try and have that one line, one answer, one actual bit of content in there, one mark. Avoid the overcoding. So if you're going over and giving more information, you will detract marks from the overall exam, and of course the no abbreviations. Let's have a look at a practice case we have here. Oh, that's great formatting, Kay. There we go. That's a little bit easier to read. So here we have a case that a practice question we used a few live streams back. We have a 55-year-old Caucasian male presenting with persisting cough and shortness of breath for 3 months, occasional wheezing, chest tightness, lifelong smoker, 1 pack of cigarettes per day, a history of hypertension, takes some lodipine, and no known allergies. Breathless, audible wheeze. This is a pretty garden variety type patient. And I think a lot of people would enter this kind of scenario and say, for this question, the condition settles, further testing confirms your primary differential diagnosis, classifies it as mild, so COPD mild. What initial management options would you recommend for John's condition? Provide 3 appropriate responses, dosing is not required. A lot of people might fall for the trap of saying SABA, send to physiotherapy, smoking, GP management plan. And here's the thing, if the patient's in our clinic, pretty much exactly what we do. This is the kind of response we'd have, and we would assume, being clinicians marking the exam, that they would understand what we're saying when we're writing this out. Unfortunately, this would muck you up completely. What we really should be saying, instead of SABA, and again, we're using an abbreviation there, commence short-acting beta-agonist inhaler for symptom control. So here we're saying that we're starting medication. What are we starting? It said we don't need to worry about doses. Ooh. If you aren't sure about spelling of certain words, they're happy to forego like spellings as long as they can work out what you're trying to say. The things they'll let go and the things they hold on to, don't ask me. But also they want to know why you're starting that medication. So specify you're doing that for symptom control. Instead of saying send to PT, we would actually be saying referral to physiotherapist for pulmonary rehabilitation. We're spelling out physiotherapist, avoiding that abbreviation, and we're specifying why we're sending them there. Now, if you want to get real good marks on this one, you could put standard referral, or if you're concerned about them, you would put urgent referral. So giving that qualifier there of the time frame in which you believe they need to be seen just adds that a little bit of extra polish as well. Smoking? Pretty vague. Are you saying you should be smoking? No, we're going to be encouraging smoking cessation. And of course, for GP management plan, you wouldn't do that as part of this question, because if we look at it, the thing says, what initial management options would you recommend? And a GP management plan isn't really a management option. So instead, you would consider something like ensure patient is immunized against influenza. So if we go back to our previous answers then, we would see that we've actually used abbreviations, so we're not going to get the SABA. Send to PT, again, we've used an abbreviation. There's no real context there. You'd lose marks there. Smoking, if you had a generous assessor, you might still get a mark in there for that one. But we can see we've actually lost marks here for the GPMP. Now, if you read the thing, it's provide 3 appropriate responses. So this is a common trap for people to fall into, and they actually have overcoded and would lose a mark from there. Let's go back to our preferred answers, and here we've got a mark for our first one, a mark for our second, and encourage smoking cessation, so important for COPD patients. So again, weighting our answers, acknowledging the most important bits, 2 marks there. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, we are going to have a whole bunch of these types of questions coming up, and I'm going to be running these live streams every week to try and give you as many cases as possible to practice. I generally give 3 cases, 3 or 4 questions per case, and we give you 2 minutes of reading time for these cases so that you actually have a chance to put some answers down.